Good evening and welcome to another edition of Your Blocking the TV.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is June 11th today, and we are here with another edition of our fun podcast, You're Blocking the TV. And both of us have backgrounds that are 100% real. And I'm Josh. This is Alex Pacheco over here, the Denver sports fan, the Colorado sports fan. But one of the things I appreciate about you, Alex, is that you're not a Colorado Buffalo fan. In fact, maybe the furthest thing from it.
Yeah, happened to be a Rams fan. Went on quite a ride with the basketball team last year. But yeah, got to represent the Colorado sports today. Big additions coming. We just got our NWSL team. Peyton Manning just signed up. Has been announced as an investor in that team, and they're going to have quite a new area built out. So really hoping that this really catches fire and we start to see specific stadiums that are built for the women's game. I know we're just introducing everything, but want to jump right into the positives and just enlighten that, hey, there's enough space in each town and city for a lot of these teams to become, semi-professional, professional teams and have a really good audience flock to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, and we've seen and we've discussed with regards to the WNBA, for example, the growth and popularity, the explosion in popularity of the WNBA. For a long time, it was a league that was kind of on life support, and it really has picked up, and it's inspired a lot of young girls, and I think that that's going to be true of any women's sports league, and we really do need to give it the extra focus there.
100%. Yeah, it's been really great to watch some WNBA games with my kiddos. To where they're not blocking the TV, they're sitting on the couch with me and actually tuning in and watching. I know there's a lot of memes out there about missing layups and that sort of thing, but I'm telling you, we saw J.R. Smith run the opposite way during a very important NBA Finals game. So if you want to throw shade, make sure that you live in a glass house as well, because what the ladies are putting out there is tremendous effort. I'll be throwing some shade at the U.S. men's national soccer team coming up. So you want to talk about the gulf of difference looking at that U.S. women's team, which has been the gold standard to soccer, compared to the absolute embarrassment that the U.S. men's national team has put out over the last 7 days. There's a lot to be said for the growth of women's sports and just being able to be able to tune in and not have to go to a YouTube or some other mode of streaming. You can hop on ABC on a Saturday afternoon and catch a women's basketball game, which I think is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, and certainly, not to knock, Sunday bowling or any of that stuff, but I mean, ESPN has aired some stuff that was less than interesting over the years, and and again, if you're a bowler out there, I am sorry, but I do not. I'm not going to change my opinion on that. Doesn't need to be on TV, probably. Anyway, so as we get into the podcast for this week, we again are going to talk about the NBA finals, which are going on right now, the NHL finals, which are going on right now. We're going to touch briefly on MLS standings. We are going to talk a little bit about the Major League Baseball world. Specifically, probably a revisit to our projections from before the season got started. And we are also going to do a little bit of a breakdown on the NFL draft. Specifically, we're going to talk about quarterbacks today. Late round picks who might have a chance to start this year, and early round picks who might not be set up for success. With that, let's talk about the NBA Finals. 1-1 right now. OKC, Indianapolis going, and I mean, it has been pretty competitive. Tyrese Halliburton has been something.
I mean, absolute lethal in the playoffs. Never, he's breaking records. He's resuscitating Indianapolis. They could actually change their the Pacer logo to a logo of Lazarus, as they're just never dead. I kept watching game 2, and my daughter turned to me and goes, "Dad, why are we still watching this? It's a 20-point game." I said, if they can make it, 12, 11 points before the fourth quarter, the Pacers are in it. And of course, OKC ran away in game 2. Game 1, Halliburton just comes alive in the fourth quarter, makes a tremendous play, missed pull-up jumper from SGA, the MVP, and come the other way, and just the dagger in the hearts of OKC fans. It's been a tremendous final. It's had drama, it's had intrigue. When you have a team that's able to come back like that time and time again, you are drawn in. And not a big ratings guy. I think ratings are kind of a very ambiguous stat right now, just based off of all the different sources that people can stream and the ways that they're getting around. I think everyone's been talking about these two teams, and it's been a really intriguing final to see how deep the Pacers are, and also some players on the Thunder where you're going, who is this guy? Where are they picking him up? How is he still hitting shots? It leads to, I'm hoping for another close matchup here in Game 3 coming up this evening, and really hoping that the series goes the distance. I think 7 games would be more than a poetic for the end of the NBA season here.
So the question is, what happens if Indiana wins this final and is crowned the NBA champs this year? What does that mean for the NBA landscape?
Yeah, we've heard from, Indianapolis's coach when they won the Eastern Conference Final. In 49 other states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana. This is Indiana basketball. It just means more here. I think for it to go back to its roots in terms of just the blue blood, for the Pacers to have their first NBA championship, either team that wins it is going to have their first banner hung in the rafters. I think that's great for NBA basketball. We had the Nuggets, who have been around since the early days of ABA ball and moving into the NBA landscape, and it took them a long time to even make a finals appearance. They were the laughing stock of the NBA in the early 90s. Really had some of the biggest losing streaks. If you look at some of the biggest blowouts, the Nuggets are there, and then them raising a title. The parity in the league has been amazing. I mean, when you're really going back, there isn't the three-peats, there isn't the repeat title holders. I honestly still think it'd be great for Indianapolis, or for Indiana to win a title this year and just bring it back to the blue blood state. And then OKC has to rebuild, and you'll probably see them pull off the gas a little bit for the next season, knowing that they don't have to win 60 games, just getting into the dance and being rested, and knowing that they've been through some tough series, and having, we've talked about this a lot in several past episodes, that learning curve of going through the gauntlet of the NBA. And also, if the Thunder win, that's not a bad thing for basketball as well. You're going to see the Celtics reload, the Lakers reload, the big boys are going to find a way to maneuver the tax aprons and brackets and make sure that they're very competitive as a team that has to build their roster to now compete with the up and coming Thunder. Which, Josh, I don't know if you've paid too close attention. I just thought the Thunder were a young running gun team. They're the best defense in the league. The way they shut down and play lockdown defense and really traditional basketball defense has been really fun to watch.
They've also got a lot of length, and with the way that the game is played today, having the ability to block shots and just contest shots is really, really big. Especially, again, I mean, you don't have a lot of guys that are out there that are under, say, 6'5". So, you've got to be able to get up. You've got to be able to contest those shots to be able to play solid defense. It's not just, slowing guys down, although that is also important.
They're a big, long team, not necessarily bulky. I mean, Chet Holmgren out there reminds me of the talking stick from Bug's Life.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
able to just sprout out, kind of just bends in awkward in awkward spots. You can almost see guys' brains moving too quickly when they're going up against them, going, I wanted to pull up there, but Chet's an awkward guy. He makes you play a different brand of basketball
right
now. Exactly.
Yeah,
He's like a pair of just curtains
player
out there following you around.
He's a player.
So, yeah, they're a different team.
And you know me, I'm going to root for the underdog no matter what. But I agree, though. This is an NBA final that, ratings aside, and we know that the ratings are not going to be as good as they would be if it was New York, LA, or Boston, LA. But that said, I mean, it's exciting to see two teams that haven't won it. And for Middle America, everybody in Middle America has got to be going nuts to have an NBA final that has excluded the major markets.
Love it. And also, I'll go back to the ratings. You want to talk about ratings? What about two major leagues in terms of the NBA and the NHL not having a Saturday night playoff game? we had nothing as sports fans on Saturday night going. I'm flipping through the channels. There were some super regionals on. Maybe the Premier Lacrosse League just fired up, an MLS game here or there. But you don't have an NBA final or an NHL final on a Saturday night. These bigwigs need to get out of their own way and go back to how it's always been. I love the 2-day breaks in between so NBA and NHL right now are in their finals and they're having 2 days off in between games, which is very uncommon throughout the season. I love it. You want the best team, the best players getting healthy and being ready. But what a miss. And that has absolutely nothing to do with Middle America being involved in the championship round.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree with you there. So pivoting on to NHL, and that one is 2-1 in favor of Florida right now. What have been your thoughts through the first 3 games going into game 4?
I think the biggest thing for me has been the gulf of just experience and talent gap in the NHL for these two teams. How no one picked, or not many picked, the Oilers and the Panthers to have a repeat matchup is beyond me. You watch these two teams, and honestly makes me feel better, Josh, that the Avs aren't in it. They're not ready yet. They could have competed. They might have been there, but holy cow, are these teams just absolutely throwing haymakers at one another. The first 2 games of the matchup go to overtime in Edmonton. I feel like it was a big miss for Edmonton to not find a way to just put the pedal down in the first overtime of game 2. Ends up going to second overtime, and the rat, as he's known, as Brad Marchand, gets the double overtime winner. He opens up game 3 with a goal 56 seconds into the matchup. So has just shown that, the former captain from the Bruins still has it, still hungry to go and chase a cup with Florida. It was an absolute slugfest. Honestly, didn't watch much of the second half of the matchup for game 3. For game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals there, in terms of just how beat down the Oilers were. They just could not keep up. They couldn't keep pace with the Panthers. There's lots of images on Twitter and all around of just Panther on top of an Oiler somewhere in a corner, a couple line brawls, a couple big hits being dished out. This is truly a battle of wills. This is the fortitude that you need for guys that we'll find out are probably playing with broken limbs, sprained limbs that they would never play through in a regular season game. I'm droning on because this is an amazing matchup. It's 2 of the best. It is the 2 best teams that are remaining. And I really hope the Oilers can dig deep to tie this one up. This is another series I'd love to see go 7.
That is always for the best in these series, especially in the final. We don't care as much when we're talking about conference finals and early rounds of the playoffs, but when you're coming down to playing for the Stanley Cup in this situation, you really want it to go 7 and just be a heck of a series, which, as you said, it has been so far.
There's nothing like getting that buzz on your phone when you forgot about a finals matchup when your team isn't in it, and it goes game 7 of the Cup final going to overtime, and you're sprinting to anywhere. You might be looking for furniture or doing a quick errand in Home Depot, and you're sprinting out to find your local watering hole to hopefully catch a game winner or someone lifting a trophy. Those are some of my favorite memories in all of sports. Is no matter who it is, as long as it isn't like the Red Wings or your most hated team, the Raiders lifting the cup or lifting the trophy, then it's okay.
So let's talk about soccer, but a question that I have to ask you, and this is a little bit on the political side because I think it's rooted in that. But we've got the World Cup coming up stateside. What are the chances, do you think, at this point, that it is going to stay in the United States?
I mean, right now, it gets really interesting. There's a lot of money being pumped in to making sure that everything is World Cup ready. I think there's a lot of other sites that are a lot more stable and able to run a World Cup, as it stands. I think when you look at the amount of travel bans and just the fear of coming here, there is a lot of political unrest. Without getting too far down the rabbit hole, I feel like it needs to be decided, sooner rather than later. And there needs to be specific guidelines, and people need to stand up to certain world leaders and say, hey, this can't happen. We are watching, in some cases, history repeat itself. And I think there's a lot of standby participants. So I've been keeping a close eye on it. I think it's been a hush hush right now. I think there's a lot of talks going on underneath the table and inside boardrooms, inside restaurants that we'll never know the true story of how it came down. But as of right now, I don't know how you not only one stage a World Cup, but this will be the biggest World Cup ever. The most teams, the most countries involved, a partnership between Mexico, Canada, and the United States, where partnership doesn't really go hand in hand with those countries at the moment. It'll be really interesting as the months and weeks continue, as we see, political turmoil and a lot of protests going on throughout the country, just today and this weekend.
Good answer. Sorry to put you on the spot there. So let's transition into MLS table standings right now. I mean, we've got a new leader in the Eastern Conference for the moment, Philadelphia. And on the Western side, Vancouver continues to hold strong.
Yeah, really competitive landscape across the MLS right now. Really starting to pick up steam in terms of the amount of games that are coming through. You have the Club World Cup that'll be decided here in a few weeks as the European leagues have wound down, crowned a new Champions League champion. But specifically within the MLS, you're just looking at two really big front runners right now that are really starting to really pace their respective leagues and conferences, excuse me. I think one of the big surprises has been, San Diego really pushing Vancouver and, 5 losses on the year, but those 9 wins to balance it. Vancouver with only 1 loss, essentially 15-1 in the winning percent column. They're really, putting it to MLS teams and getting results. Still waiting for a lot of the true blue bloods to kind of wake up and see what type of a team they're going to be. I'm looking at Real Salt Lake. I'm looking at the Galaxy, FC Dallas, the Dynamo in the Western Conference, which have been really big players. The Seattle Sounders, which always have, a big following up in the Pacific Northwest. And then even the blue bloods in the Eastern Conference. I'm looking at, Toronto FC, which is not too far removed from an MLS Cup. You're looking at the Chicago Fire, New York FC. So a lot of these teams where you're going, what is your DNA? What are you going to put together? Who's going to put together a winning streak to really put their stamp on making a playoff run?
Well, the Galaxy did finally get a win.
They're on the board.
They've got one, along with Montreal, who's got one. Everybody else has got more than that. Everybody else has got at least 3. So, yeah, it's interesting to just kind of follow the progress here because, of course, Portland has jostled back and forth between, about 6th and 3rd, and now they're sitting in 4th. And I mean, I'm sure that they would say, with the way that they've played down the stretch, that they feel good going into the latter part of the season here, down the stretch, getting ready for the playoffs. But is there a team right now that you see that, speaking of waking up, that has started to kind of climb in those standings, whereas we had thought before maybe this just wasn't going to be their year?
I think, seeing Inter Miami kind of be the team that we expected them to be with such a talented roster, really putting a nice string of games together. Messi's been a lot more vocal in terms of the media and being a lot more passionate in terms of where his team is going to line up. Looking at the Portland Timbers right in your backyard, I feel like they're just one of those teams that's primed for a run this postseason. A tough place to go into, scoring 27 goals, so right up there with some of the top goal scoring producers in the league. And I think that the other main aspect is just looking at those teams that can get ties. So if you're getting a tie, and I know that's a curse word in the American sports vernacular, is we want winners, but that ability to get ties. So when you look at the Columbus Crew with only having 7 wins, but also having 7 draws on the year, they're competitive in every game. And if you're competitive in every game, especially in a 2-leg early postseason matchup, you have a chance of making it far, especially in those one and done games where anything can happen. I'd put my money on kind of those 3 teams and curious, what their next stretch of games will look like.
Well, we'll see. That's one of the fun things about doing this podcast every 2 weeks is that a lot can change in that amount of time. And so, yeah, we'll see. Okay, so moving into our special topic for today, and we are going to do another deep dive, NFL draft wise, something similar to what we've done for today for the next show, where we talk more about skill player positions, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. And then we'll have an episode where we talk about defensive players specifically as well. Reality is that while defense wins championships and defense is paramount in the NFL and in all sports, when people are talking about specific players, oftentimes what they're thinking about is fantasy contributors. And so they want to know who are going to be the guys that are worth grabbing, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not specifically what we're talking about here, but that's why skill player positions are the number one interest, and quarterback being number one there. Of course, people are going to want to know who's the running back that is going to be, as a rookie, a huge contributor, a huge breakout guy this year. Same with wide receiver, same with tight end. But you don't draft defensive players typically in most leagues. So,
I would say for
we'll focus less on that.
I would say for this list too, Josh, sorry to hop in, but for these players that we're talking about today, where they're newly drafted, they may or may not start, kind of have some different ideas on where players will land for your keeper leagues. So if you're playing it, if you've heard someone talking about a keeper league or a long-term league where you're inheriting a team, a lot of times you're inheriting a team that isn't great. Someone that's typically leaving their team isn't going to be at the top of the standings each and every year, or they may just want to get out of it. It's a big investment. Highly recommend a keeper league. If you can keep an eye on these up and coming picks, like a Quinn Ewers, and you're able to have a pick in a keeper league coming up, and you want to just hang on to him for a couple years, like, this is a great conversation to listen into.
Absolutely. And I'm going to talk about the guys that were drafted in the late rounds. So rounds 4 through 7 specifically. And what we're looking for here are, who are the guys? I mean, and we do see starters come out of this group. I mean, first year starters. Look at Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, right? It does happen. Those guys aren't specifically being targeted when they're drafted as guys that their respective franchises are expecting to be the starter year one. But again, it does happen, and injuries happen, and circumstances change. Guys impress versus, what the expectations were, et cetera. So, but some of these guys have pretty long odds to be contributors this year, certainly. And I would say one of the big ones there is Kyle McCord with the Eagles. McCord, of course, most remember his time at Ohio State. There was talks of him transferring to Nebraska, and then that got squashed as soon as Dylan Raiola signed, and was obviously going to be the guy that was going to be the starting quarterback. So he ends up going to Syracuse, puts up video game numbers there. He went to high school in Philly. Right now, he's likely the number 3 QB going into the season, but everybody, I think, knows this is Jalen Hurts' team. He has turned himself into a star. And McCord just doesn't really seem likely to win the backup position. He's probably going to be number 3. And offensively, the Eagles like to give they've built their offense around Jalen Hurts and the style of football that he can play. He's got a lot of flexibility in the offense. They utilize him a lot in the run. He's very capable there. That's just not Kyle McCord. So, I mean, it seems quite unlikely, barring a situation where the Eagles, lose 2 QBs, that McCord starts a game this season. But I think he's capable. I don't necessarily think he's a future star, but you never know. You never know with a guy like that who has elite skills as far as throwing the football is concerned, for sure.
Yeah, I would argue, and a lot of times I find this is a great spot for quarterbacks to sit into. And I know we'll talk about this individual a little bit later in the conversation in terms of Shador and a lot of other quarterbacks that are just slated to play right away. I think this is a great position for Kyle McCord. Come in, really learn from a veteran team that has made it the run to Super Bowl championships and been in big games and has a lot of pressure packed, a lot of games that are going to be national televised, so might have a little bit longer to prepare. And be in that quarterback room is just so underrated. It's really difficult for a player like McCord, who's been the guy in college and then is going to go to a third string. And I really think it's up to those type of players to decide, am I really going to put in the work and come to work every day and take advantage of my 5 reps that I'm going to get in practice, and then, hit the books and play with Uncle Nico down the street to really get those extra reps? Or am I going to sit and pout and take the money and be out of the league in 3 years? So there isn't a lot of big trades per se in the NFL. There's a lot of free agent pickups and manipulating the roster that way. But if he can stay ready and stay, primed and ready to go, I'm sure there's another team that if they fall on injuries or he's on the practice squad if he finds his way there, that he'll be picked up and has a good chance to have show me what can happen in the NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's likely to make the roster. They obviously like him and they like what he can bring to the table. He will be a capable backup when it comes to that. I think he's just not going to be a guy that's going to win you a championship at this stage. Moving on to Will Howard, there's been a lot of up and down, a lot of mixed opinions of this guy. Another guy that, I mean, instead of starting his career at Ohio State, he finished his career in college at Ohio State after being at K-State for so long. He goes to the Steelers. Steelers just signed Aaron Rodgers. And, I mean, the conversation is already very much Aaron Rodgers has been brought in as an elderly statesman here, an elder statesman, to help bring along Will Howard. Mason Rudolph, sort of an afterthought as the second guy right now. And he's a career backup. We know that he's not going to win a championship for the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers, if he can stay healthy all year, we know he's a quality quarterback in spite of his age. Will Howard seems to be the heir apparent. They seem to be trying to give him an extra year to develop before seeing what they have in him in 2026. We'll see.
You know who Will Howard reminds me of a lot is Taysom Hill. He's one of those types of players and types of body builds where even though you came from the Ohio State, you might have to make a change to make an impact, and could easily see him slotting in as a third down tight end, one of those players that just big body. Hey, go sit on a route. You're a quarterback, timing, verbiage, how to get yourself open. That might be where he needs to fit in, because what I've seen from veteran quarterbacks and heard from listening and keying in is Peyton Manning's not giving up reps. He's not giving up secrets in the room. That's not his job. He wasn't brought in. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is staying after practice sessions looking at video with Will Howard going, hey, come here, Rook. He's getting out of there as quick as possible. He's showing up for only what he needs to. He's bringing in his own wide receiver room, so they telepathically know each other from doing ayahuasca trips and just doing whatever it is he does. I think Aaron Rodgers is one of the worst things that you could bring into a franchise. And not being a Steelers fan myself, I wonder how this is going to play out and why you would, in my opinion, waste a pick on a player like Will Howard when he's not going to be utilized as a QB anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Aaron Rodgers, I would say, he's one of those guys. I agree with everything that you said about him personally and about what kind of character he is in the locker room. But I think he's probably going to get hurt. I would almost guarantee that he's going to get hurt. And I think even though Mason Rudolph is probably going to be slotted as the number 2 guy, I think if it's midway through the year and Aaron Rodgers goes down, they're really going to have to evaluate where they're moving as a franchise, and if they want to start building for the future right away, or if they want to just punt to the following year. If they want to start building for the future right away, they may have Will Howard up jump Mason Rudolph and become the starter. So I think that there is an outside chance that Will Howard will start some games this year. Even though I don't think that is their plan at this point. I think that's the way things shake out. Now, also Aaron Rodgers has said, quote, I will help Will Rodgers in any way that I can. Do I trust in the integrity of that statement? Not necessarily. I mean, I agree. I think he's going to be more about himself and glorifying himself. That's just who he is. But, maybe he's turned over a new leaf. Maybe he's accepted that, he can take a nice paycheck to kind of move towards retirement, and he can help a guy out on his way out. Because, of course, we all reach a point where we can't do it anymore. Most of us much sooner than these guys. And maybe he's accepted that. Maybe he went on a trip, literally and figuratively, this offseason, and he came to that conclusion himself. I don't know. I can't say. You're probably right.
I think if Vegas were to throw up odds on will Aaron Rodgers be there to help in any way that he can, I think you'd throw some plus 10,000 odds on that one. Just
Maybe.
don't feel too good.
You might be right. You might be right. And so anyway, he's not going to be my pick for most likely to start in 2025 by any means. I just wanted to go through everybody that was taken in rounds 4 through 7. So up next is Riley Leonard, and he's with the Colts. Of course, the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson a few years ago. They had the goal of making him their supersized superstar franchise quarterback. I think he's both of those, at least on the surface. That just hasn't exactly worked out. He has shown flashes. He's just been inconsistent, and he's been injured. And so a lot of folks are suggesting that Riley Leonard, who currently projects as the number 3 guy, as I think is kind of a recurring theme with these guys that are taken in the later rounds, behind Daniel Jones, he could push for the starting job this year. They have been very impressed with his approach. By all accounts, he's been a professional. And those are the things that you do to ingratiate yourself with your coaching staff and your franchise. And I think that with what they've gotten out of Anthony Richardson, they might be looking to pivot to somebody that's just going to give them some stability. We know Daniel Jones can be a good quarterback, but he's also shown some real, not great stuff. And of course, I don't want to indict Daniel Jones and say that he's just trash, because he played for the Giants leading into this year. And that's a tough place to play. It's a tough market to be in. It's a tough franchise to play for. They don't exactly set their big time QBs up for success there. At least they haven't since, Eli Manning was the quarterback. So, but I think there's a pretty good chance, and he's definitely going to make my cut list of guys that have a legitimate shot to start this year in year one as late round guys.
And I need to look this up, but the Colts did not make the playoffs last year, right? They were right on the cusp.
Yeah,
I believe.
No,
so they're jostling to figure out what their DNA is, what's going to happen for them, what moves they need to make in a talented AFC. The biggest thing I'll say about Riley is you are getting a guy that is cut from the right cloth. If you haven't read his essay in the Players Tribune, when he wrote it after just a devastating loss to NIU and what it meant, and him taking accountability and then walking through what that accountability means to him. It's an essay that I sent to all of the players I coach, read it to my kids, read it many times to myself, and just said that's a guy that I want to emulate off of. That's a guy you want in a QB room that is going to hold himself accountable. You're not going to have to worry about him up late at night or not being completely engaged in his job. Like you said, a true professional. Love everything about Riley Leonard. Hope the best for him, and definitely will have an opportunity if he can show well in preseason camps and in the preseason.
Got a couple Duke Blue Devils at quarterback on that franchise. Daniel Jones, and even though Riley Leonard finished his career with Notre Dame, he was at Duke, if I recall. So on to a guy that I just have to mention. I think this is the guy that is least likely to start out of these picks, and that's Graham Mertz with the Texans, for similar reasons to what we talked about with Kyle McCord and the Eagles. So is another guy who projects as the number 3 QB on the depth chart. Coming out of Florida, had some experience in Wisconsin, but you've got experienced vet like Davis Mills, and then CJ Stroud ahead of him. CJ Stroud is the franchise QB there, for better or worse. It just doesn't seem likely that he has the ability to contend to start without major injury issues on the depth chart. And of course, he's coming off of an ACL. He had his final college season cut short in October, and he has, gone through his surgery and his recovery and everything. And obviously, the Texans franchise felt good enough about him to waste a draft pick on him. But I think it's a very, very long shot that guy's going to play at all in 2025.
Yeah, might see him as a name that's passed around from team to team throughout his career, is that he just tries to prove that he still has it. Really tough to come back from, especially when you're on a team, like you said, that already has the QB in place. Really, his statistics are back from 2023. So not a lot to go off of. Not really sure what he has left in the tank, and just to hop in and expect him to be a contributor, I think is a big ask.
So now we're going to move on to the Raiders, who took Cam Miller out of North Dakota State. And we've seen some kind of mixed results from those North Dakota State QBs. We've seen some successful guys, of course, but we've also seen some guys who turned out to look like a bit of a reach as guys that got drafted. So he's projecting as the number 3 guy for the Raiders this year, behind Geno Smith and Aiden O'Connell. But the reports are suggesting that O'Connell could get cut and Miller could get elevated to the number 2 job. And that means only Geno Smith, who has had an up and down career due to inconsistency and injuries, could be the only thing standing in the way of Miller as a starter for the Raiders, which sounds insane, but it's the Raiders. So
you also have an old coach in Pete Carroll that has, his own connection with Geno Smith, and will, I would assume would hang on to him a little bit longer than most coaches. Geno probably have a short leash, go in there, be a game manager, keep us in games, give us a chance in the fourth quarter. I feel like he has an even longer leash with Coach Carroll in the mix. But also the Raiders are in a brutal division. The Broncos are getting strong, Kansas City, San Diego. It's really a murder's row for 6 games there out of your 17 game season. So I really feel it depends on how the start goes. Might not start out of camp, but I assume that we'll see him at one time or another at some point throughout the season.
So last but not least, depending on your perspective, Shedeur Sanders. Of course, everybody knows he was taken by the Browns, and we've talked a bunch about it. We had almost a whole episode of the podcast where we pretty much just dogged on the guy, and I'll be the first to admit that I had very little positive to say about Shedeur. But there are a few things that are working in his favor in Cleveland. And one of those things is the competition that he's facing for the starting job is not exactly world beating. And he has sort of seemed to approach his pro career post-draft with some patience and humility, which I think is refreshing. He's always had the skill. The question was just whether or not he could lead a team. And I think he may be silencing some doubters right now. There are definitely some people out there that are predicting that he will overtake the field and win the job in 2025. And the other thing is they're the Browns. So even if it's not the right decision, especially if it's not the right decision, it might be their decision this year. And so, yeah, I mean, we might see Shedeur Sanders as the starting quarterback for the Browns this year. And I said last but not least, we actually have a couple other names on the list that we'll go through before we finish up on this little segment. But yeah, Shedeur.
Why not see what you have? Throw them out there. You're not making a playoff run. You really don't have the talent on the team to really make an impactful run, in my opinion. That you have parts that, here or there, if a QB gets it right, then you're going to be this world-beating team. This is another one where you look at your division. You're staring up at some very difficult teams that are making moves that are making their teams better. And I think throwing him to the fire wouldn't necessarily be the bad thing. He has been thrown to the fire everywhere he's been. At Jackson State, then going to CU with all the doubters against him. I wouldn't be the least bit offended if he turned into kind of like a Alonzo Ball type, where he proves all the doubters wrong and he just finds a mainstay and he performs. I think a lot of what rubbed us the wrong way was just the Sanders media powerhouse, if you will, that you're just getting hit on it from every stream with the brothers involved and seeing all the cameras and wait and his elaborate show during the draft of sitting around and waiting for that phone to ring, and probably being an arrogant kid, which who isn't? There isn't every kid isn't Riley Leonard at this stage where they're walking in where they've been kind of given everything in their life and that they're accustomed to that, and they're going, hey, I know what the pundits are saying, but shoot, coach is going to give me a call, I'm going in the first round. And then you get humbled a little bit, and I think that slice of humble pie, he's probably using that quite a bit right now, similar to how he was recruited in college, going, I'm ready to show the world that I have what it takes. And the biggest thing that I saw living here in Colorado was Shadur can take a hit, man. That offensive line was absolutely horrendous. He was getting hit 90% of his dropbacks. That's a stretch. I would need to actually look up the statistic, but even when he was handing the ball off, he was taking a crushing hit. So this guy can take it. He can take a punch and get knocked down twice, stand up 3 times. Would love to see him get an opportunity.
Yeah. I'm rooting for him. I would love to be proven wrong when it comes to Shadur, for sure. So we've got a couple other names on the list. Curtis Rourke, taken by the Niners. I think this is a typical 49ers late round QB pick. They're just kind of stocking the stable up. Rourke had a nice college career. He could have some upside. He played most of his days for the University of Ohio Bobcats, and then transferred to play for the Indiana Hoosiers, and looked really good. I mean, he's a good, solid player. But I mean, he's in a situation with the 49ers where Brock Purdy is the dude, and his backup has some experience there. So I just think the Niners would have to be in a really tough spot for Rourke to start in 2025. But that said, they have been in some tough spots over the years, and guys have gotten the opportunity to come in there and show what they've got. So you never know, but he's got pretty long odds at this point, I would say.
Just feel like at this point, any late round pick by the Niners is anywhere near Mr. Irrelevant is going to be a QB. They tend to have good luck there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And the last but not least is Quinn Ewers with the Dolphins. And this conversation is going to be mostly about Dillon Gabriel. So right now, Quinn Ewers projecting as the number 3, like most of the guys on the list again, but I have heard some rumors that the Dolphins really, 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 really wanted Dillon Gabriel in the draft. And when he went, they traded away that pick, and they were very disappointed that they did not get him. They thought he really fit what they wanted to do well. And so much so that, maybe he's their replacement for Tua Tagovailoa. Obviously, at this point, we're talking about really hypothetical stuff because that's not out there, and it may be all smoke. But some people are thinking that they could make a deal with the Browns to bring him in before the season starts. And I think if that's the buzz around Dolphins off-season camp right now, Ewers is not the guy there. And then also you've got Tua Tagovailoa, who, when he is healthy, is a pretty solid quarterback. So I think, Quinn Ewers has got an uphill battle there. He's not going to make my final 3 of guys that are most likely to start a game or start out of those rounds in 2025.
I'm going to go the opposite route. I have high ceiling for Quinn Ewers. I don't know why the name just keeps standing out. I feel like he's going to surprise a lot of people, no matter where he ends up. I think he has had an up and down college career where he really wasn't understood, and has been used in a lot of different variations. Had a tough go at Texas with a lot of noise, with Manning coming in, and just had a lot of question marks surrounding Ewers. When I look at him at the Dolphins, if he does stay as a Dolphin, he's starting a game. Tua is he's fine China, unfortunately. I fear every time Tua's on the pitch, that he's seeing ghosts out there. I want the best for Tua. I think he's a heck of a guy and was going to lead the Dolphins. And it's tough that it's come down to head injuries and just being, beaten down, that'll hamstring his career, and he just won't have the trajectory that I think we all kind of expected. Zach Wilson was a Denver Bronco for a minute, and I tell you what, like, he's got good looks in spades, and has a very well-known history with the good looks of his mother. But other than that, he's kind of just a token piece for any NFL team. Don't really see him moving the needle. So I feel if Quinn Ewers does get moved, he's going to impress. He's going to go to a team that doesn't necessarily have a franchise quarterback in place, and we'll get a very good look in a system where I think he'll translate into a very good NFL quarterback.
Well, we'll see. As we know, as we get into our overview or gloss over of our MLB projections, we can be very, very, very off base with some of our opinions here. So, we'll see. So my final thoughts, Shadur Sanders is the most likely guy to start out of this group, followed by Riley Leonard and Cam Miller. We'll see how it shakes out.
Absolutely. I'm real bullish on Quinn Ewers. I think he's going to surprise. I think we will see him starting a game and being really that surprise pick. And having a lot of pundits talking about him. And then, Shadur's going to get a look. He's going to have an opportunity. What he does with it will be on every talk show, every show across the nation, talking about
Oprah,
what's changed.
It's going to be on Oprah.
And what he looks like.
So now
Oprah's
the
still
question
around?
is...
You do a subscriber of OWN?
I have no idea. I'll be honest. So now the question is, who do we think of the guys that were taken in rounds 1 through 3, which of course there were fewer. This was not a QB heavy draft as far as highly touted guys are concerned. Who do we think of those guys that were taken is going to be a bust? And we're talking about Jackson Dart, Cam Ward, who was taken number 1, Tyler Shuck, Jalen Milroe. Who do we think is going to be a bust out of that group?
I think the biggest one that just stands out like a sore thumb, Tyler Shuck. I think there's a lot of movement going on. I think Spencer Rattler being on that team, there's a lot of people that say he has the experience and hasn't gotten his fair share. I feel like a lot of coaches that go from that offensive coordinator position into head coach, it's different. It is, you just are not able to implement all the things that you want to put into a team. So I'm curious. I hope I'm wrong. I love the high flying offense that's traditionally run for an indoor team with the New Orleans Saints. I just think he's going to have a tough come to Jesus moment.
I think it's going to be, first of all, I agree that out of everybody, even if there are, inevitably only maybe 1 or 2 of those guys is going to end up being a starter for any amount of time in the NFL. But I think Tyler Shuck is the guy that is going to get thrown to the wolves, and we're going to find out much sooner with him whether or not he could stick. Because the situation for him in New Orleans, he's the de facto favorite because they took him in the second round, and Spencer Rattler looked lost last year. Jake Haener is I think he's going to be the starter because they don't have anybody else really. Or at least he's going to get the first shot at starting, and I just think it's going to be a tough time. They have struggled recently, period. Even with Derek Carr, when he's been healthy, they haven't been that good. And now Derek Carr is out of the picture. So I think he's going to have a really tough time. I think Cam Ward is going to be set up for success. They're going to invest a lot in him in Tennessee. I think Jackson Dart is not going to get thrown to the wolves right away. So he's going to have an opportunity to develop a little bit. And I think Jalen Milroe, the Seahawks like his athleticism as much as anything, and they're going to give him time to develop as well. So I think Tyler Shuck, I feel bad for the guy. He's got a long ladder to climb, a long mountain to climb in order to be successful, certainly this year and long term.
I think that's an underrated tough market as well. I think that the Saints are what New Orleans has, and everyone rallies around the Saints. And of course they have, LSU and some of their college teams. But besides that, like, football runs pretty deep, down south. And it'll be interesting to see how he handles, kind of some early season struggles and where the Saints are going as a franchise.
So, next show, we are going to talk about running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. It'll be very similar to this segment that we did here today. Now, we're going to just revisit very briefly. We're going to talk a little bit about MLB standings, of course, but we're going to revisit our projections as far as most likely rookie of the year candidates, and most likely breakout stars, all first-time All-Stars, etc. But real quick, standings wise, AL East, New York Yankees leading it all the way. But the Blue Jays and Rays have made a push recently. Red Sox kind of fallen off a little bit. And the Orioles, who I don't have to look back at our projections, I thought this was a team that was going to contend for that division this year, behind the Yankees. And holy smokes, they're going to be sellers at the deadline. Like, now we're just looking at what pieces are going to get sold from that team. That's it's a sad state of affairs for them.
Yeah. And tough to see them bouncing back in any legitimate way. I think that's the toughest part about Major League Baseball, is just seeing the selling so quickly. They had such a good run going, and what we thought would be kind of the surprise team and making a push and really putting some heat on being a World Series contender. Man, is it brutal just to see that all those parts are going to go, and we start again and see what they can build with their picks and what their farm system looks like.
I mean, I don't think they'll sell everything. I just think, they've got some veteran guys like Cedric Mullins. He's probably going to be going. They're going to hang on to their young core, the Gunners and the Holidays and so on and so forth. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And that's the thing with Major League Baseball, is because it's such a long season, you can still get to that point before you even hit the midway point where you feel like it's over, even though mathematically it is not. You're just like, look, here's how things are stacking up against us. This is what we have to overcome, and realistically, we're not going to do it. They're only 8.5 games back. I mean, yeah, they're not as out of it as, say, the Rockies, but I mean,
weren't we eliminated a couple months ago?
Yeah, I think emotionally they have to feel like they're out of it at this point. They are 7-3 in their last 10. So there's that. But out of all the 5 teams in the AL East, they're the only team with a negative run differential, and it's -91. Pretty bad. Pretty tough.
Only team that's sub 500 at home, and they're 6 games under. So, I mean, a lot to figure out in what's a shrinking amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. AL Central, the Detroit Tigers continue to just look like a special team. They just have a lot of really solid pieces in that lineup. And then, you look at guys like Javi Baez, who, you sort of thought was a bad contract that they were holding on to, that they had acquired. And he is having, one of those resurgences that we talk about. I don't think anybody thought was coming from Javi Baez, but he's playing well. Minnesota Twins are currently in second place, 8 games back. And the Guardians are right behind them at 8.5 games back, but they're just kind of treading water. Nobody is playing particularly well in that division outside of the Tigers. It's kind of up and down. The Twins do have a positive run differential. Everybody else is in the minus. Kansas City Royals have decided to go for it with Jack Caglianone. He hasn't looked bad in his first time at the big league level by any means, but he's not going to be enough to carry them over the hump in that division or to catch the Tigers. And then, of course, the White Sox they don't look as bad as they were last year, but they're not good. They've got a long ways to go. So, teams that will be sellers, certainly the White Sox, certainly the Orioles. I bet the Rays are going to make some deals, but they're not going to be sellers. They're going to be that team that every year, whenever they come to you at the deadline, you should be leery of what they're asking for.
What am I missing?
What am I missing here? What do you see in this guy that I don't see? Well, you'll just have to find out after he succeeds with us. And then in the AL West, the Houston Astros have risen up, as we thought that they probably would eventually. They don't have a commanding lead in that division at 3.5 games up on the Mariners. The Mariners have been up and down. They're 2-8 in their last 10, lost 3 straight. You know, it's not over in that division. It's a competitive division when you look at the difference between first and say fourth. The Rangers are only 4.5 games out. So, you know, that division could go down to the wire, but the Astros have come a long way. They were in like third or fourth not that long ago, and they've just started to do what the Astros do. And soon enough, they're going to get guys like Yordan Alvarez back. And yeah, I mean, they're just going to be good again.
Yeah, weak division. If you know, Astros 22-13 at home. You know, no team that is above 500 on the road. So really just a messy division right now where you're just looking for someone to take the bull by the horns, and the Astros look to be doing just that.
The Athletics have had some bright spots. We talked about them not being as bad as they probably should be. I still think that they're not as bad as they should be. But one of the reasons why they're not as bad as they should be is Jacob Wilson, who just, I mean, the guy just, he can just hit, man. I mean, like, it's unbelievable. Every time I look at a box score with Jacob Wilson in the lineup, and he is out of the lineup right now, they're giving him some time to recover from being a little bit banged up. But every time you look, it's like they only have one hit. Who's got it? Jacob Wilson.
Hey, they
they've
can
got
hit.
three. They've got 3 hits. Jacob Wilson's got 2 of them. You know, like, I mean, the guy, he can just hit, and he continues to bat over 300. And I mean, talking about him not as just rookie of the year, although he's the clear favorite in the AL. He's probably gonna make the All-Star team, and you know, dark horse for the MVP, maybe. I mean, unbelievable.
They just have to stop giving up runs. 413 runs given up, dead last in Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Yep, it's rough. They, you know, they have a pitching staff that is retreads and never wases, you know. I mean, and that's oftentimes what they do. We've talked about what's it going to look like when they finally find their forever home. Things may change, but you know, for now it's kind of the same old story with the A's. Moving on to the NL, specifically the East, that's an interesting one. Specifically, the Atlanta Braves, who they won today, but they're 2-8 in their last 10. They just have. It's like they're trying to tread water, and somebody's just bopping them in the head, just trying to drown them. They just can't figure it out. And you know, they've gotten Acuna back. Obviously, he's huge for them, and he has played well. They just can't seem to figure it out. They're 14 games out. We know that the Marlins are not going to be a contender, but they're only 3.5 games ahead of the Marlins right now in that Eastern division. The Mets looking like they should look for the payroll that they have. So not a surprise there. And the Phillies are right behind them, 4.5 games out, but 10 games above 500. One of the better records in the National League. That's you got a couple really, really good teams there, and I just wonder what's up with the Braves. When are they going to figure it out, or is it going to become too late for them?
Top heavy. I just don't think they're going to figure it out. I think we keep waiting. We keep saying they're going to wake up. They're going to be this giant. They're just not making the tough decisions. There's no one that's really riding the hot hand. And when you have 2 juggernauts in the Mets and the Phillies that are just doing things consistent, putting at bats together, staying in the positive with run differential, even in a positive run differential, plus 10 for the Atlanta Braves, 9 games under 500. I just don't see them being able to string anything close together to be in position for striking distance in a brutal National League.
Yeah, no, you could be right. And, you know, if that happens, if they miss the playoffs and, you know, by a lot, like they don't even finish above 500, which right now looks like a possibility. Brian Snicker probably gone, I would think. I doubt that they're going to hold on to a manager of a team that is that disappointing after they've had the success that they've had, right?
100%. A lot of change coming in Atlanta, unfortunately.
National League Central, Chicago Cubs continue to play well. I said PCA was my breakout star pick, and I'm just going to ride that one because I missed on a lot of them. But PCA, whoo, Pete Crow Armstrong, that guy looks like a superstar at this point. And he, along with Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, they have led the way for this Chicago Cubs team that is playing quite well. 5 games up on the Cardinals right now with the lead.
And just fun to watch. I mean, what a fun young team to watch, and PCA just puts at bats together. I love seeing the fans, the younger fans showing up with their the shirts painted, stomachs painted, everything ready to go for a guy that is just showing up night in and night out, doing it both offensively and defensively. The Cubs are putting themselves in a position to not just be a contender in the Central, but also a World Series contender with the way that they're playing baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, their run differential is 103 right now, and yeah, I mean they're just playing. They're playing at another level. They're still pretty solid against teams above 500 at 22 and 22. But right behind them, 5 games out, is the St. Louis Cardinals, who have lost 4 straight, and they're still hanging in there. They're 24 and 20 against teams above 500. I think they're maybe that sleeper pick that could sneak in with a wild card spot and maybe do some damage, but a lot has to go right for them. They've got to have everybody healthy, and they've got to have everybody clicking in order to be successful there. And then looking at the rest of the NL Central, the Brewers above 500 at 36 and 33 and third. The Reds have won about 19 games against Cleveland Guardians in the Ohio Cup. They did drop one today in the finale, but the Guardians made them look like a really, really good team. They're 35 and 34 in fourth in the Central. And the Pirates, I mean, they're not the worst team in the majors, and they've got some bright spots, but you're going to have to wonder if they're going to look to move some guys that maybe they thought were going to be mainstays for a long time. Brian Reynolds, guys like that might be leaving Pittsburgh. And then the NL West is what we thought it would be, continues to be so. Really a 3-team race at this point. The Dodgers a half game up on the Giants. And I continue to just be impressed with the Giants and their ability to just weather the storm, because they've had some ups and downs this year, and they're 39 and 28. They're only a half game back of the Dodgers. And you hear the Giants fans year in and year out over the last couple off seasons are just so upset with the lack of big blockbuster moves that the Giants have made, when the Dodgers and Padres are just grabbing everybody out of free agency. And look at what they're doing this year. 7 and 3 in their last 10, 6 straight. And they're just hanging right with these world-beating gazillion-dollar Dodgers.
The 6 straight is going to turn into 8 straight, as well, as they have 2 more matchups with the Rockies here in Denver still to come. They rallied from a 5-2 deficit last night here in Denver, and watching some of that game, the later innings, it just shows you how good of an organization the Giants are, and why they won so many World Series championships that they did. Is they just continue to construct a team based off of international talent and players that fit their mold. They can beat you in 1-run games out in San Francisco, and they can go on the road and take advantage of opportunistic hitting, if you will, and moving runners over and moving from first to third and doing the little things that you need to do to win games, as opposed to what you'd see from the Yankees of just hitting the long ball, or just trying to manufacture runs. They can do a little bit of everything, and they're a dangerous team in the NL West. The Dodgers and the Padres meeting for the first time this season, currently in a series, and all these teams neck and neck. The NL West will be an absolute bloodbath to see who emerges, not only as the NL West winner, but also who's going to make that bid for the wild card.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point it's pretty clear cut. The Diamondbacks may still have something to say about it. They're at 500 at 34 and 34, and they're only 6 games back. But I mean, it's unlikely that they're going to catch up. And I would say, with what some of the other potential wild card teams have done in the National League, they're probably not going to make it. But there's a lot of baseball left to play. But talking about the Padres, they're only a game back of the Dodgers in third place right now at 38 and 28. And it is an opportunity for them to show the world, that they're not the little brother of the Dodgers anymore. But man, are those Dodgers good. God, every time Shohei Ohtani comes up in a crucial situation and you're like, let's see if we can get him to do something he doesn't want to do. And then he takes a pitch that nobody should even be able to make contact with, and he hits it 430 feet.
Yeah.
And you just throw your hands up in the air and you're like, what am I supposed to do? Because then also you got Freddie Freeman in that lineup. You got Mookie Betts in that lineup. You got Teoscar Hernandez in that lineup. The list goes on and on. Max Muncy is playing well. It's almost not fair. It's not fair. If I was going to put the Dodgers against the Yankees right now, I would give the Dodgers a pretty good shot at going 4-0 in a 7-game World Series.
That's a tough spot too. It's if they can stay healthy, they're making the playoffs. Even if they can't stay healthy, they're probably making the playoffs. And it's, what are they going to look like come September and October?
And yet they don't have the best record in the National League. They are third best in the National League behind the Mets and the Cubs. So, as an American League fan, or as a fan of an American League team in Cleveland, I'm really excited for this National League and how things are going to pan out down the stretch.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun run. 2 weeks from now, it can look mightily different.
And it probably will. We're going to be, let's see, I forget when the All-Star break officially is and when the deadline is and all that stuff. Let's see, trade deadline this year is, thanks, Google. That is not the answer I'm looking for.
Every time you need it, it feels like it doesn't pop up as soon as you need it. But
yeah, okay. It's not coming up as soon as in my mind. I was thinking it's July 31st.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. Why does it show me 2024? Deadline date. Got to be specific with Google, apparently. It is still July 31st, but so that's a Thursday. We'll see. We'll see what kind of moves are made and how much things shuffle. And then we've got MLB All-Star Game 2025. That is going to be coming up on July 15th. So we're just over a month away from that. It seems like the season just began, but we are well underway and things are crazy in Major League Baseball. So that being said, we have droned on long enough for today, and we are just going to have to take anything else we have to say and say it in 2 weeks, at which point we will have an NHL champ. We will have an NBA champ. We will be that much further into the MLS season, and things will inevitably have jostled and shuffled in Major League Baseball standings. We will also talk about, as we said, more of a breakdown of NFL draft picks, specifically running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And that's going to be that. So until then, continue with the Not Blocking the TV. This has been Your Blocking the TV. I'm Josh. This is Alex. See you soon.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.